So this fall, Americans seem to really love horror. True Blood, American Horror Stories, The Real Housewives of New Jersey. But NBC's taken a different tack on horror, and they've created a procedural cop show about Grimm's fairy tales come to life, and it's all set in the deeply, deeply green and mossy Northwest. And tonight, two of the actors from Grimm are with us. Silas Weir Mitchell, who you've also seen on The Mentalist, Burn Notice, My Name is Earl, and lots of other shows. And Bitsie Tulloch, who you might have seen in Lakeview Terrace or House and various other shows. So please welcome Silas and Bitsie to Livewire. Welcome to Livewire, Silas and Bitsie.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
It's wonderful to have you here. Now, I actually was able to watch the pilot of Grimm online, which is great. They're doing that a lot with shows now, where they're just offering it sort of ahead of time to the fans of the shows, and I think that's great because it just starts that initial buzz a little bit.
Did you see the whole thing?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I
they
was
did
able
it
to
through Twitter. I think when they're feeling confident about a show, they've been doing that to get more fans excited, and that's that whole word of mouth thing.
Yeah. So, but for a lot of people haven't had the opportunity to see it, and so just an overview of the show. It's a show about a homicide detective, Nick Burkhart, and he solves crimes, but he also keeps humanity safe from supernatural creatures, because it turns out that all of those creatures from Grimm's fairy tales are actually real, and he's the only one who can see them. He's called a Grimm. And Silas, you play Monroe, and you're definitely the comic relief of the show. Quite funny right off the bat. So as an actor, how do you prepare to play a wolf?
Spend a lot of time with your dog.
Uh-huh.
It's interesting because, the supernatural element is actually, in a way, it's sort of like, I like to think of it more that it's a mythological kind of element. Like if you're a detective and you're a homicide detective and you're dealing with these horrors, on a daily basis, you realize the sort of mythical depths of what people can do. And then you add the Grimm element in, and they say the Grimms were actually writing about real people, real terrible things that were happening. So in a way, the preparation I did had more to do with the mythical nature of the werewolf that we all have in us.
Yeah.
Like if Nick Burkhart looked at Son of Sam, he wouldn't see David Berkowitz. He would see the creature that David Berkowitz's human mask is covering.
Right.
And I find that really rich.
Well, and it's also the special effects on the show are so good. It was amazing to watch it. It's funny because I thought of An American Werewolf in London when I watched it, and just how far we've come in terms of special effects.
Yeah,
since
it's
then.
Unbelievable. The guy Barney Burnham, right? Burnham?
I don't know.
Yeah, he's
Barney.
Barney. You don't have to sit
Well,
in the
yeah,
chair
you don't have
for
to see
4
him a lot,
hours,
Bitsie, because
I don't have to wear prosthetics.
And yeah, you play Burkhart's girlfriend.
Yeah.
That he loves.
He loves
Yes. And you actually studied literature at Harvard.
Yes.
And you've talked in the past about reading those original horrifying Grimm's fairy tales, the ones that we sort of get the clean version, right?
Yeah, we have, what we're used to is a sort of mass-mediated children's version of the Brothers Grimm, but when, one thing a lot of people, I didn't even really know this until I booked the show and I started doing more research, but they didn't write the stories. They were sort of cultural profilers and linguists, and there were a lot of similar stories. There were a lot of European analogs, and they sort of synthesized all of the stories. And there were, at the end of the day, I think something like 211 fairy tales and 585 legends. So I always feel like if the show's successful, we could be doing this forever.
Right.
Plenty of source material.
Yeah,
exactly.
But they were really, really scary, and they were meant to be warnings against, infidelity and sex and all this stuff. And they're gruesome and bloody and. The Pied Piper is to me, the scariest one.
Why is the Pied Piper the scariest for you?
Because it's just it's creepy.
It's the Pied Piper is the one that, from what I've read, I haven't done like massive amounts of research, but the Pied Piper is one that has real historical underpinnings in the sense of someone trying to find guys to recruit people for a war. So it's this kind of, hey, come hang out. I'm going to indoctrinate you. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
It'll be really fun. I
Yeah,
have my
it's like, hey,
flute.
come over to my place. We'll hang out. We'll have some beers. Go to war. Kill people for your country. That kind of thing.
Right. Well, and there is, as dark as it is, there is humor in this. And producer David Greenwald was also an executive producer on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And he's producing and he's writing for the show as well.
Yeah, he writes with Jim Kelf, who did Angel.
So do you feel like he's brought some of that humor to this show?
Oh, definitely. I mean, the gallows humor is very present. It's a very real part of the show because it's a real part of the life of a detective. You can't constantly. You got to go out and have a drink. You know what I mean? You got to go out and do some, play tennis or whatever. You know what I mean? You got to crack jokes. You're dealing with cadavers and these, like you were saying, these horrible things that humans do that the Grimms were actually dealing with. They were dealing with mothers who didn't love their children. They were dealing with like abductions. And then they turned them into stories, but these are real human behaviors that, you need to leaven it.
Sure, absolutely. Well, and also I think, David Benchley, who wrote Jaws, Peter Benchley, I think he talks about that in terms of, the best time to really terrify someone is right after you've made them laugh.
Yeah. It goes both ways. Like there's a long period of tension, you want the laugh.
Right.
And if there's a long period of like, ha, 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 you can get in that door too.
Yeah. If you're just joining us, you're listening to Livewire, and we are talking to Silas Weir Mitchell and Bitsie Tulloch from NBC's Grimm. So you guys have worked on a lot of shows that are really grounded in the real world. So what do you like about working on a show now that has these fantastical elements?
I think you're probably better to answer that since you play a wolf.
Yeah.
I'm a veterinarian and I don't morph at all, so.
Well, you actually, you had to shoot one of the more difficult scenes that I thought in the film. You had to run through the Oregon woods at night in a really flimsy nightgown, and it didn't look like you had shoes on.
Well, I can tell you something really funny about that. NBC, and I caused a little bit of a fuss about it, but in hindsight, I get what they were doing. They got a stunt double for me to run, and it was like literally from this end of the stage to this end of the stage.
So like
it looked
10
longer,
feet.
And I was like, guys, I know how to run. like really? No, you might sprain your ankle, but there aren't that many twigs. Like, what? I mean, I know I'm clumsy, but I'm not that bad.
They had a guy for me to climb a tree.
Yeah?
Yeah, like 3 feet up a little tree. Uh-huh. They're just being very protective.
Sure. OSHA,
it was mostly
guys.
just very cold.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Lawsuits.
They're everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah. They're everywhere.
But when the fantastical elements are really, really fun because, again, like I was saying earlier, to me, it's about being able to live in a mythical realm where there's archetypal behavior, and so you're allowed to kind of push into human behavior in a way that you're not allowed to do that if you're playing something that's absolutely real, like based in the reality that we know. Because as far as I'm concerned, monsters are real. I mean, you look at the world we live in. Look at Gaddafi, man.
Yeah.
That guy was a monster.
Yeah.
And he's dead. They killed the dragon, and that's what Hansel and Gretel is about. It's about kill the evil mother figure so that you can then live your own individual life and not have this thing over you. That's all real.
Yeah.
And when you do what they call a genre show, you're allowed to play in that water, and it's sort of delightful, actually. It's like Shakespeare.
You were doing an interview actually where you were talking about the power of suggestion, and we're just so open to that as actors in kind of a way that's not always so fun.
Right.
Like when we were being asked about what frightened us when we were little, and I had this thing where every time I was going from the first story of our house to the second story, if the lights were all off, and I was convinced that Satan was chasing me up
Yeah.
the stairs.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
And it was just so real to me. For like 10 years of my life, I hated having to be the one to shut the lights off and go upstairs because I was like, the devil's gonna get me.
And when you start running, you're done.
Exactly.
You start behaving as though it's real, forget
Yep.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. It's almost as if your body convinces your brain
Totally.
Completely. Yeah.
that this is going to happen.
The
I'm dead.
imagination is a powerful weapon.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because it's got to be sort of freeing to go into this fantasy world. And I saw, it was Lauren Zalaznick from NBC Television, actually, and she was talking about how an increase in popularity of fantasy television shows always maps almost exactly to spikes in unemployment in the United States. And so it seems like you're doing for other people sort of what being able to create these characters is doing for you.
It's really funny because I didn't know there was any kind of empirical evidence
correlation.
to that effect.
Absolutely.
But I've said that in other interviews. People have said, because, just the way you introed, Once Upon a Time and True Blood and sort of fantasy type stuff.
Right.
That I think that people go back to myth when the real world and, boom times, let's make up stories. This is cool, this is crazy, this is interesting. And when it's dark times, it's kind of like myth is the way that the human species figures itself out through the stories that it has told itself.
Yeah,
So-
and those same stories
Yep.
for centuries.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and the
That's
show
really
is
interesting.
gorgeous. It makes Portland look gorgeous. It's shot so beautifully. The cinematography is so beautiful, and it's a great show. It does have humor, and people love procedurals, and it's great to see a procedural done in a different way. So definitely, it's on NBC Friday nights.
Friday nights at 9.
Friday nights at 9. Before you go, I did look into all of the Grimm's fairy tales that are out there, and I'm going to list 5 of them, 5 of the ones that no one knows, and you're going to tell me which one you would like to see them actually produce. The Valiant Little Tailor, The Girl Without Hands, The Gold Ass and the Cudgel in the Sack, The Devil's Sooty Brother, and my personal favorite, The Mouse, the Bird, and the Sausage.
Didn't you say you had a poet tonight? He
We
can
do
something with that.
He
I mean,
absolutely can.
Yeah.
But is there one that you just, if I could only get my acting chops into that one?
The Mouse, the Bird, and the Sausage.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You want to play the sausage?
I would love to play
The sausage's job was to cook, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, I just today read The Fisherman and His Wife, where a guy talks to a flounder repeatedly.
That could work.
The flounder grants wishes,
They just need to get one of those fishes that you give at office parties that sings on the wall. They don't even have to.
The Billy Bass.
Exactly. No CG costs.
There you go, exactly.
Yeah. I should really work for the show, you guys. I have a lot of great ideas.
Think about it.
Get you in the writer's room.
Exactly. Well, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for stopping
Thank you
by.
for having me.
Silas Weir Mitchell and Bitsie Tulloch of NBC's Grimm.
Thanks a lot. That was really fun.